The candles flickered against the glass, and my mother's voice cut through the laughter. 80,000 for Laya's studies in Paris, she said, lifting her glass. Forks paused. The room hummed with approval. Then I asked quietly, "What about me?" She didn't look up. "You don't deserve any help." The air thickened perfume steak and silence. I smiled, nodded, and let the moment burn into memory. That was the last dinner I ever attended. 4 years later, when my sister's car slowed outside my $5 million house, she called my dad crying, and none of them knew what I'd done to get there. When I was 10, birthdays meant sitting at the edge of someone else's spotlight. Laya's cake always came with cameras, confetti, and a speech about her potential. Mine came with a bus pass and a lecture about independence. I remember the bus driver's name, Henry. He used to wave every morning as I climbed on backpack heavier than my shoulders could handle. The seat beside me was always empty. At home, everything revolved around performance. Mom measured love in results. Dad measured it in returns. When Laya joined the debate club, Mom called it leadership. When I joined robotics, she called it a hobby, not a plan. She'd walk into my room, wrinkle her nose at the tangle of wires and code scribbles. "Try something people actually notice, Alice." Leia got the newer laptop, the bigger room, the family's attention, like a steady spotlight. I got the quiet parts, editing her essays, fixing her phone, running errands in the rain. Mom said I was helpful. Dad said I was practical. Neither of those words felt like love. One summer, I won a local coding competition. I printed the certificate myself because the email said, "Congratulations, your project ranked first." I showed it to Dad while he was fixing the sprinkler. He squinted at it, nodded once, and said, "Well, that's a start." Mom never asked what the project was. Laya posted about her Paris exchange interview that same night, and the comments filled our family group chat until my phone died from the notifications. None of them were for me. Dinner conversations always circled back to her. Laya's professors, Laya's grades, Laya's charm. If I spoke, Mom interrupted with, "That reminds me, Laya had the same idea last week, so I learned to let silence do the talking. It hurt less than trying." By high school, I'd built a small app that tracked bus routes for students without cars. The local paper called it a clever idea. Mom called it time you could have spent networking. She clipped the article, but only because my last name was printed under the title. At graduation, they sat front row, perfect smiles, pastel outfits. Laya cheered for a friend across the aisle while my name echoed through the auditorium. No one stood. I remember clutching my diploma like proof, not pride. That night, Mom hugged Laya and said, "I'm so proud of both my girls, especially you, sweetheart." I smiled because the camera was on. Later, alone in my room, I pinned the bus pass above my desk, right next to the certificate no one cared about. The rain outside hit the window in slow rhythm like a metronome keeping score. That was the night I understood the math of my family. Laya equaled light. I equaled silence. The night of the Paris dinner, the air smelled like polished silver and overcooked meat. Laya sat across from me, her face glowing under the chandelier, rehearsing French phrases, while our mother corrected her accent between sips of wine. I'd spent the day fixing a bug at the cafe's Wi-Fi, my fingers still smelling faintly of espresso and burnt circuits. Dad cleared his throat. "We've finalized everything. $80,000 for tuition, rent, airfare. Laya deserves to focus on her studies, not money." He said it like an announcement, not a decision. Mom nodded proud, her pearls catching the light. I thought he must have misspoken. 80,000! My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "That's the whole thing." He nodded once. "Of course, it's an investment in her future." The word investment stuck like a stone in my throat. I swallowed, forced calm, and said, "I'm short on my dorm deposit this semester. 2,000 would help. I'll pay it back." Mom didn't blink. "You don't deserve help, Alice." The sound wasn't loud, but it landed like glass cracking. Even Laya stopped smiling. I waited for Dad to correct her. He didn't. He just refilled his wine and said, "We put money where it brings returns. You made your own choices." Something inside me went perfectly still. The hum of the chandelier, the scrape of knives, the smell of candle wax, every detail pressed into my skin like a photograph. I smiled once, small and sharp. "I understand." No one answered. The moment folded into itself like a file closed and archived. When I stood, the chair legs screeched across the floor louder than anything I could have said. Outside, the air was cold. Seattle rain had just started tapping on my windshield like fingers counting time. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was still buzzing with messages. "Don't be dramatic. You'll regret this." I turned it face down and watched the screen go dark. That was the night I stopped asking for fairness, and the night I started building something no one could take credit for. The next morning, I deleted every family contact from my phone. No ceremony, no tears, just names turning to blank space. The silence felt cleaner than any apology ever could. My studio in Capitol Hill was small enough that the heater clicked every 10 minutes. The walls smelled faintly of detergent and burnt toast from the neighbor's kitchen. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and built a new folder life plan. Inside it, I logged 3 files savings goals projects. I wasn't sure what I was building, only that it would run better if no one else had access. By day, I brewed coffee for strangers, fixing the cafe's Wi-Fi when it crashed. By night, I coded under the yellow desk lamp, the hum of rain constant against the glass. I tracked every hour, every cent measured life in small returns. My only rule was simple document everything. When people leave holes, data fills them. A few months later, I landed a part-time IT job at a logistics startup downtown. Glass walls, whiteboards, the faint scent of new carpet, and ambition. My badge read Wayfinder Labs, contract engineer. 12 people shared that office, but at night it was mine alone. I stayed after hours testing lines of code until the sun tinted the blinds gray. That was when Arjun noticed me. He leaned over my desk one evening, watching my screen glow. "You're optimizing delivery routes." I nodded. "Just a side project." He smiled. "Then make it your main one. If it works, we'll pitch it." We did. 2 weeks later, Wayfinder Labs had a prototype and a name for the module Wayfinder. We tested it with small businesses, coffee shops, bakeries, flower deliveries. Each data set I cleaned felt like reclaiming a piece of the control I'd lost at that dinner table. I kept everything: notes, fuel logs, emissions reports, client emails. When the pilot succeeded, Arjun called it innovation. I called it proof. Zoe, my roommate, sometimes dropped by the office with takeout. "You're obsessed," she teased, handing me a warm paper bag. "I'm building distance," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "From what?" "From permission." The months blurred into graphs and quiet victories. My therapist, Dr. Monroe, taught me the vocabulary for what I'd lived through: conditional love, emotional invalidation. "Your parents didn't reward you for being good," she said softly. "They rewarded you for being useful." I nodded. "Then I'll make usefulness my own." By the end of that year, Wayfinder became more than code. It became a voice I didn't have to raise. Numbers spoke. Reports replaced arguments. When the company offered to spin it into a startup, Arjun made me CTO and co-founder. We signed the papers in a glass conference room overlooking Lake Union. Rain streaked down the windows like slow static. I signed my name without shaking. Every milestone I logged. Every invoice I tagged. It wasn't paranoia, it was architecture. Control had shape, and I could finally draw its blueprint. The next 3 years were a blur of expansion and quiet triumphs. Wayfinder grew from 2 desks to 2 floors. Our emissions cut model hit national news. An angel investor backed us after seeing our pilot data. I didn't buy new clothes or post about it. I still wore the same gray hoodies and tied my hair the same way. But I upgraded the laptop and kept the old one in a drawer like an artifact from a different version of myself. One evening, as I cleaned out that drawer, I found the torn note I'd written after that dinner. "Call Mom," crossed out hard enough to rip the paper. I ran my finger over the tier. Then I folded it neatly and filed it under Archive. Lessons. 4 years passed like that, quietly, steadily, until one small notification changed everything. The real estate app pinged with a new listing, a lakeside home in Medina. I clicked out of curiosity, then didn't stop. The house was minimalist, all glass, and wood facing the water. It cost $5 million, the same number that had once sounded impossible. I bought it. No co-signers, no permission, no shared names. The morning I moved in, the air smelled like wet cedar and new beginnings. I set my things down in the empty living room, then hung one item on the wall, the green bus pass from my 18th birthday framed behind glass. Beneath it, I wrote in small type broken roots better paths. For the first time in my life, silence didn't mean absence. It meant peace. Some nights I'd stand by the glass wall, watching the rain trace its slow lines down the window. My reflection was faint, almost ghost-like, but solid enough to trust. The house was still except for the hum of the washing machine in the distance. I'd think of my parents sometimes not with anger, just curiosity. Whether they still believed that worth was something to invest in. Whether they ever wondered about the daughter who'd stopped asking for help. Then I'd close the laptop, check the payments, and shut the lights one by one. The lake outside shimmered in silver. This time I wasn't running from their silence. I was mastering my own. It happened on a Saturday. Sunlight slipped through the wide glass panes, turning the floor into strips of gold. Ethan and I were about to leave for the farmer's market when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Then instinct made me swipe. Alice. It's me. Laya. Her voice trembled, scattered between breaths. I just drove past Medina. Your name's on the gate. Do you really live there? Outside, the sprinklers clicked in rhythm with her silence. I answered softly. What are you trying to ask? Laya. She inhaled sharp. Why do you have that? The call dropped before I could reply. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, reflecting the faint outline of my face against the glass. Within an hour, messages started pouring in: Mom, Dad, Aunt June, Grandma. All names I hadn't seen in years. Each voicemail carried the same shape of desperation wrapped in different tones. My mother's voice first polished and performative. Laya said something unbelievable, darling. Call us. She's upset. You can't let jealousy divide this family. Then, Dad's measured and heavy. Maya, it's your father. Let's talk as adults. We're still family. That word again. Family. It always arrived when they needed something. By evening, a courier delivered a letter. Cream paper, expensive handwriting, Elaine Collins. The first line pretended warmth. Laya's expecting. You'll be an aunt. Maybe it's time to heal. Then the calculation unfolded. Your father's been struggling with work. The roof needs repair. Family supports each other. And the final line perfectly sharpened. I know you're not a cold person. I folded the paper once, twice, until it fit neatly into the trash. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't even get angry. I just reopened my old therapy notes, the one labeled Boundaries. I wrote a new line. They don't miss me. They miss the role I used to play. 3 days later, I sent 2 letters. The first to my mother-mom, if contact is to continue, 3 conditions. No money, no guilt, no surprise visits. I don't need apologies. I need space. The second to my father. You called it investment in return. Here's mine freedom. Let's close the account properly. He replied in a single text, meet me in Fremont. Thursday, 10 a.m. The cafe near the bridge smelled of rain and burnt espresso. He arrived on timecoat, still pressed eyes dimmer than I remembered. You look different, he said. Better or worse, different is fine. He tried to smooth things over, calling Mom's cruelty misunderstood. I listened quiet until he said we did what we could. Parents make mistakes. I met his eyes. It wasn't a mistake, Dad. It was math. He blinked. Math? You invested $80,000 in image. I built value out of nothing. The difference is honesty. He didn't argue, just stared at his untouched coffee steam fading into nothing. When I left, I said, you don't owe me anything. That's the point. A week later came the Gala Seattle's annual education fundraiser. Wayfinder Labs was sponsoring the new STEM scholarship. The hall shimmered in gold, the air thick with perfume and conversation. Ethan squeezed my hand. You ready? I nodded, spotting them before they saw me, Mom in pearls. Laya in pale blue, her pregnancy softening the sharpness of her face. They approached, smiling for the crowd. Mom's voice was honeyed steel. We came to congratulate you. You've done so well. But remember, success means giving back. Laya's preparing for the baby, and your father still needs that roof. I let her talk. Then I turned to the host and said calmly, excuse me. A stage assistant appeared with a pearl white envelope I'd prepared earlier. I took the microphone steady. Tonight, I'd like to make a personal contribution, $80,000 to fund scholarships for young women told they don't deserve help. The hall fell silent. Then applause broke rolling like thunder. I looked straight at my mother. You once called it an investment, I said softly. So do I. Her smile cracked. Dad, who had just entered, froze mid-step. The spotlight hit the check, $80,000, signed by Alice Collins. It glowed under the lights like quiet justice. When the applause faded, I walked off stage past their stunned faces into the cool Seattle night. Rain had started again, thin, steady cleansing. After the gala, I didn't post a thing. No photos, no captions, no statements. Silence spread faster than any headline. The next morning, the city was washed in mist. I stood by the lake barefoot on the cold wood deck, the water silver under the soft rain. My phone stayed inside, face down. It hadn't rung since that night, and for once, that silence didn't feel like loss. It felt earned. Inside the house was still. Ethan brewed coffee in the kitchen, the scent mixing with the faint hum of the washing machine. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said. Finally. He smiled. You looked lighter last night. I wasn't lighter, I said. Just finished. Later, when he left for work, I walked into my office. The glass framed the lake like a slow-moving screen. My desk was clean, only my laptop, a mug half full of cold coffee, and the small glass frame on the wall. Inside it, the green bus pass. The one they once said meant responsibility. Now it meant freedom. I opened my journal, the one from therapy, and wrote the final entry. They taught me that love has to be earned. I learned that peace doesn't. Outside, a heron crossed the water. I watched it disappear into the fog wings, beating slow and sure. I thought about everything that had led here, the quiet nights, coding under flickering lights, the rejection disguised as advice, the endless need to prove worth, and how none of it owned me anymore. In the distance, thunder murmured somewhere beyond Medina's calm. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and sat by the window listening. The rain no longer sounded like the night I drove away. It sounded like the life I chose instead. They once told me I didn't deserve help. Maybe they were right, because what I needed wasn't help. It was distance, silence, and time to build something that couldn't be taken away. Now, when the rain hits the glass, it doesn't sound like sorrow anymore. It sounds like proof. If you've ever been told you weren't enough, remember this: sometimes walking away is the loudest answer you'll ever give. And if this story stayed with you, don't scroll yet. Tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far silence has carried you too.